you talk to small business, and they will tell you they are still experiencing a severe credit crunch. The larger businesses right now are able to get financing. Even the medium-sized businesses, the credit markets have improved. Smaller businesses, even if they are making a profit and have not missed a payment, are finding that banks are adverse to providing them capital. Now, two reasons that they cite. One is they say their bankers are telling them that the regulators are just looking over their shoulder too much, and so the community banks feel that their hands are tied. These are independent regulators. They are diligent in doing their jobs. Obviously, they feel caught off guard because of the lax regulation in some cases of the banking industry before the financial crisis. You get a sense that the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. The challenge that we've got is we've got to be careful because these are independent regulators and we don't want to politicize them. But what Treasury Secretary Geithner and others have done is to discuss with the regulators what we are hearing in the field and to make sure that there is a consistency of approach that doesn't prevent banks from making what are good loans and taking reasonable risks. So that's one thing we're hearing. The other thing, though, that is still out there is that the larger banks generally haven't been in this market. A lot of the smaller companies never had access to them in the first place, and we want to actually see if we can get more of those large banks to get into this marketplace. And when I met with the big bank CEOs, this was something that I pushed them on. They tell me, and we have seen some confirmation of this, that they are actually ramping up some of their small business lending and setting up more aggressive divisions, actively seeking out loans. So that's the effort that we're making to jawbone the private sector to do what it needs to do. In the meantime, you mentioned the specific proposals that we put forward. I do think it's better to do them through legislation than through executive order. TARP was a congressionally created structure with some fairly stringent guidelines in terms of how we were supposed to approach it. It shouldn't be hard to do, though. It's a pretty simple concept. Banks have repaid money. There's $30 billion that we could take that has already been repaid, immediately apply that to a fund so that small banks or community banks are able to provide their small business customers with greater lending. And I do think that getting that as part of a jobs package is priority number one. And I know I've already talked to Harry about this. My assumption is that if you combine that with the tax credits that we put in place for hiring, the provisions that we've talked about to incentivize weatherization programs that can immediately start hiring people to retrofit homes and businesses and help reduce our energy costs, taking some of those immediate steps now, I think will pay some big dividends down the road. And the timing of it is perfect because our job last year was to make sure the economy was growing. The economy is now growing. But what's happening is businesses, either because they can't find financing or because they're still just dipping their toe in the water, have been hesitant to hire full-time workers. And for us to start giving them some serious incentives, giving them additional access to financing, could accelerate a process that otherwise could take a much longer time. And frankly, all those folks out there who are out of work right now, they just can't afford to wait any longer. They need it now. All right.
We have time for one or two more questions. If the question's short.
And the answer's short.
Otherwise, we'll only have one question. The Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Pat Leahy.
Mr. President, one, thank you for coming here. I think this is... thank you for coming here. I was just whispering to Marcel, these answers are so good and need to be heard. You have a great sense of what the federal judiciary should be. I think back to President Clinton's time when the other side blocked 61 of his judges. You've had some superb judges. You've talked to both Republicans and Democrats, some superb names, and Senator Reid still has to file cloture. We have to spend a week of doing that, and then they pass by 100-0 or 90-10. My thing is this. Because of what they did last time, we're end up with the greatest shortage and the most judicial crises, I think, in our history. Will you continue to work very hard to get up names as quickly as possible so that we can do this and help us get these judges through? I don't want the same judicial crises to occur. You've had good nominees. Can you commit to work with us, both parties, and keep trying to get them through?
Good. Well, this is going to be a priority. Look, it's not just judges, unfortunately, Pat. It's also all our federal appointees. We've got a huge backlog of folks who are unanimously viewed as well qualified. Nobody has a specific objection to them, but end up having a hold on them because of some completely unrelated piece of business. That's an example, Michael, of the kind of stuff that Americans just don't understand. On the judges' front, I mean, we had a judge coming out of Indiana, Judge Hamilton, who everybody said was outstanding. Evan Bayh, Democrat, Dick Lugar, Republican, all recommended. How long did it take us? 6 months, 7 months for somebody who was supported by the Democratic and Republican senator from that state. And you can multiply that across the board. So, we have to start highlighting the fact that this is not how we should be doing business. Now, in fairness, when we were in the minority, there were some times where we blocked judges, we blocked appointees. I think it's fair to say we were a little more selective in how we did it. A lot more, somebody said. So this is an example of where I'm going to reach out to Mitch McConnell. I know Harry has as well. And I'm just going to say, look, if the government's going to work for the American people, I can't have the administrator for GSA, which runs every federal facility, all federal buildings all across the country. Here we are, we're trying to save billions of dollars, cut waste. Claire McCaskill's been all on top of how can we audit our spending, and we could save billions of dollars in ending old leases that don't work or renegotiating them or consolidating buildings and efficiencies. But I don't have a GSA administrator, even though I nominated somebody who was well qualified several months ago, and nobody can tell me that there's anything particularly wrong with her. They're blocking her because of some unrelated matter. I don't know. You guys may know better than I do. And that has to end. It has to end. And the American people want it to end. Let's have a fight about real stuff. Don't hold this woman hostage. If you have an objection about my health care policies, then let's debate the health care policies. But don't suddenly end up having a GSA administrator who is stuck in limbo somewhere because you don't like something else that we're doing. Because that doesn't serve the American people. Then they don't know what the argument's about. Then it's just sort of a plague on both your houses because it looks like you guys are just fighting all the time. And we've got to put an end to that.
I missed somebody on my list. If you would just be patient with us, we'll have two very short questions.
I will indulge you, Kerry.
The first question is going to come from the only person that's a member of the United States Senate.